Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hello Eagles fans, welcome to The Nest on what has been an awesome few days. I can feel the good vibes you've got permeating through you from here because, Drew, I'll make a big statement off the top. That's our best win since 2018.
Yeah, wow. Hey, Garby.
Can you think of a better one in that time?
No, I can't. The circumstances.
I mean, maybe the final over Essendon because that's a final, but, you know, you're splitting hairs there for me.
No, I don't think it's better than that win. No, it was massive. I think you put the context around it. 14 minutes and 20 seconds into the last quarter, no McGovern, no Shuey, no Kelly, no Shepherd. We're losing to the reigning premiers by 22 points. Not many would give us much of a chance to kick 4 goals and absolutely dominate that last bit of play, and then to put together a passage of play that almost rivals the Dom Sheed goal. I mean, for it to even be in that conversation means that it's bloody fantastic. Yeah. And, I think there would have been just about every single Eagles fan who wasn't in the house. And God, there's never been a game that I would have rather been at Optus Stadium than that. But we were all off the couch, you know, for that last minute or so. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so we'll speak about the atmosphere in a moment. I was watching the game out and then had work to do for the Euros, covering the England game, which I'll touch on in a moment because there's a link there. I'm sure you're wondering how, but I'll tell you in a moment's time. Came home and first thing I wanted to do was watch the last quarter again, like just had to. Yeah. Last quarter straight away. And I've watched the last 5 minutes probably 5 times since. And just reveled in it. And then, you know, the Monday night shows, couldn't wait for them. I'm sure people are sitting around right now. Let us know on Twitter. How many times have you watched it? How many times have you watched passages of play of the last 2 minutes? Because, yeah, that's the moment to revel in. And it's for the atmosphere as much as the play, Drewy, and the win. It's for the reverberation around Optus Stadium, which was just so electric.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'll allow me to indulge a little bit, Garby, with the way that unfolded late in the game, but I've written about it for the Nest. It's going up tomorrow morning. But so many things went right for us, but I actually reckon it was a really great bit of coaching and then execution by our players to be able to get the game on our terms and then to ultimately, you know, score the 4 goals that were required to win the game, because we took a risk and pushed up really, really high in order to blunt Richmond and make sure that we got field position and give ourselves a chance. And now it's risky because, as we saw, if Martin and Shai Bolton get out the back, they can really do damage to you. And a couple of times, you know, we dodged a bullet with Martin having ball in hand, and that would have, you know, one more goal would have broken us. I reckon we wouldn't, you know, obviously we weren't going to get the win if Richmond scored again. So we made an adjustment, and I just want to talk you through it a little bit. I've watched the last quarter a couple of times. If you look at the goals that we kicked, they're from shallower entries into our 50. And I think it was really important that we made an adjustment because Vlosten, Bolter and Grimes all played really good games down back. And in particular, even Broad on Ryan was awesome. Like, Richmond's defenders played a great game. You know, Jack Darling got shut out of the game and Kennedy kicked 4 goals. So he was the outlier in terms of a forward that really performed well. But so the goal for Waterman, that was a shallow entry, mark and goal. The goal for Jamie Cripps was when Kennedy received that handball from Luke Edwards. He dodged around Basher Hooley, and then instead of bombing it long, Kennedy lowers his eyes and hits Cripps. You know, and so Waterman and Cripps both had tough shots, you know, 40 metres plus, and slotted them both. So accuracy is a massive thing, and West Coast are number 1 in the AFL for accuracy. So straight away, the Eagles there, they made an adjustment to not bomb it long to those inform Tigers defenders who were controlling the game,
Yeah.
make them shallower entries and give ourselves a chance to have a shot on goal and lessen the chance of the Richmond ground ball game taking over. So that was really well done. I mean, we know we got a big mark from Nick Nat deep late, and that would have been a crescendo on what had been a massive play for us for him to kick that goal after a magnificent mark. Didn't happen. But then from that kick in, Vlauston over kicks Luke Edwards, who had 11 possessions in the last quarter, intercept mark. And again, second game player, 19 years old, the crowd is going fucking mental. The instinct would have been throw it on the boot, get it deep, give the big boys a chance to mark it. No, he just settles for a second, eyes down, and sees that Oscar Allen's in that little pocket of space with Baker standing in front of him. Now, Baker's only 147 centimetres. He's tiny. So can kick it over his head. Oscar Allen marks, kicks the goal. And then that gives us the chance then to win the game later. But I just thought that adjustment from us was really good to take that away from the Tigers, which has been a strength all day.
Great spot. And I'll give actually some credit to Jack Darling in that sense, because he was getting beaten up early by Vlauston. And I reckon on that, he would have been happy to play the decoy. So he's still taking a key defender. He took them deep to the goal square. That's where he played a lot. And he probably knew he wasn't going to get a lot of the ball because we're going to change things up a little bit. Yet he was happy to play a sacrificial role and not be involved in the play that often. Fair play to him for being willing to do that. And then Kennedy pushes up the ground and other guys take advantage of those pockets of space. So he probably worked well in that regard to occupy defenders and free up space for other players. So, yep, that's great. I mean, Lukey Edwards, okay, I know we'll get onto him in a moment. That kid must have been born with Xanax in his veins or something. Like, how chilled can you be two games in? How calm, how composed. He just does not look panicked or ruffled for a moment, and nor does Harry Edwards, to be honest. The composure on that kid, like, that's the story out of this for me is, we've all been thinking 2 years' time, we're going to go for a flag over the next 2 years, and then we're falling off a cliff in 2 years' time. Well, we're probably not. We've got Oscar Allen up forward, Harry Edwards down back. Here, there's a couple of bookends already. And then Edwards and Foley, to name just a couple. And then you've still got guys like Ryan and Kelly who have got plenty of football to play, Liam Duggan, Jared Brander and others. I mean, maybe it's not rebuild. There might be a little reset there for a season or so, but I don't think it's rebuild talk around us now. I think that whole narrative has changed too.
Harry Edwards has had a really good couple of weeks, hasn't he? Like that, the footy nous, the confidence and the game awareness for him to take that Barras kick and roll to his left foot. Yeah. So knowing that he was going to be on his wrong side, which meant he would have had to make a tough decision at some stage once the man on the mark gets to play on. And he just sort of angles his body and then kicks it partially off the outside of his boot to hit that kick to Elliot Yeo. But that's unbelievable. To either know in your mind that there's going to be that option there, to have that certainty in the game style and the system is amazing. But then also to have the confidence to try and pull it off. And then Yo obviously knows where Ryan is, because otherwise you couldn't explain that kick that Yo hits. So the intercept mark from Hearn, who played an absolutely fantastic game.
Awesome.
And Tom Barras really stood up late, like a couple of massive intercept marks. And then so Barras hits that kick to Edwards. Again, him playing on, rolling off and hitting that kick, I just can't believe. Like, it was just perfect. That sets up the goal because he gets it so quickly.
I just want to watch the last quarter again right now.
Yeah.
You're talking about this. I just want to watch it again right now.
Yeah. And then, like, Ryan didn't have a great game. And obviously, we've seen that a million times where he runs his opponent under the ball and then gets out the back. Like, it's classic Ryan. And for him to pull it off in that moment and then hit the kick, again, lowered his eyes, Garby, didn't blaze away, hits the guy coming at him. And I don't know if you saw on Fox Footy last night, they measured the kick, 14.5 metres. That's close enough. Yep. Close enough is good enough for me. So what's going through your mind with Kennedy with ball in hand?
Oh, no, I was pretty confident. Yeah. You're swept up in it all, obviously. So you're panicky but I was confident. He kicks those so often. I actually thought about the 2018 grand final straight away, to be honest. That was going through my head. He kicked one from maybe 5 to 10 meters closer, but, you know, enormous pressure, same pocket. Okay, start of the fourth quarter in the 2018 granny, not the last minute of the game, but still has to kick it. And because Collingwood has kicked the first 2 of that quarter and did. That's what I thought of. So the confidence from that came through.
Yeah, I mean, you can almost call it the JK. A 35-metre snap on your right foot. Well, 35 out plus on the right. I don't think there's anyone that does it better. He gets so much purchase on it. Like, for most mere mortals, if you try and kick a snap that hard, you end up kicking the belly of the ball and it goes the other way or straight. But he gets that purchase and that swing back. It flirted with the left-hand post, didn't it? So there was that moment where you were like, oh, is this going to go through? So yeah, I gave it the jump in the air and the come on, and both the dogs, I think, startled and jumped off the couch nearly. But yeah, amazing moment. Rewatched the last quarter straight away after watching all of the post game, and then I watched it again yesterday. And then I wanted to break down those plays. So yeah, we've been over it a few times, but this is one of those times where you can be really indulgent. Like, that goes down in folklore for us as one of our great moments at Optus Stadium and one of the great moments under Adam Simpson.
100%. So where does Josh Kennedy sit all time? I'm just actually looking through it now on the goals. So he's got to be he's 26 all time. I've just found it. He's 26 all time. And he's got a chance. You know, we talk about Buddy's 1,000. This is the point I want to make. We talk about Buddy's 1,000. JK's 27 off 700. Closing on Matthew Pavlich. Could go past him. I mean, if he kicks another... How many goals is he going to kick in his career? It might be tough for him to kick another 100, depending on how many games he's got left. But the point I'm getting to is, you know, we go on about Buddy a lot, and so we should. All-time legend. Josh Kennedy ain't that far behind. He might not be Buddy, but he's not that far behind. I know he gets a lot of credit in the game for being a great. I'm not sure he gets enough of the Buddy-style recognition. And I think he should, when you look at what he's been able to achieve and where he sits, all-time goal kicking and so on and so forth. He's just an absolute great of modern AFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you take away the bells and whistles and the really magnificent, super athletic, ridiculous stuff that Buddy does, in terms of the overall output, Kennedy's not far behind. Obviously, there's a gap with the goals. But if you think of over Kennedy's career, what he's brought to the table in terms of selfless forward pressure, tackling, goal assists. I mean, it's clear that he gets far more enjoyment out of his teammates kicking goals than him actually kicking goals. The way he celebrates. I mean, aside from that magnificent photo, which I'm sure you've seen, which is from the crowd out, seeing Kennedy celebrate on Sunday night. Generally, he's much happier setting one up or enjoying others' success. Yeah. So he's a very selfless character. And that's maybe meant over the journey that he hasn't kicked as many goals as, you know, an out and out, you know, poacher, I guess you'd call it in soccer terms, or a sniper, you know, like kicking goals is not the be all and end all for Josh Kennedy, but boy, he's bloody good at it. And he's played injured a lot. You know, I've spoken about this on the podcast before. He's played entire seasons for West Coast, essentially carrying 1 or 2 injuries and never makes a fuss. But always pretty much delivers. It's amazing what a week off did for him. He looked fresh, and the way he was moving was great. Like, I guess when you watch a player play sore or play injured for a while, you kind of get used to it, and then you see them a little bit fresher and you realize that, you know, what they can do. But he looked, in a sense, he almost looked reinvigorated and played an amazing game. He's certainly an all-time great at West Coast, and he's there with Franklin, Jack Riewoldt, and Tom Hawkins in the modern era. There's your 4, you know, out and out best full forwards, and he's absolutely deserving to be in that space.
Yeah, it's your Mount Rushmore of key forwards going around right now, without a doubt. So he's going to be fresh going into the Bulldogs game because we'll have the bye. Yeah. That's going to be, you know, hugely advantageous for us. And I think the story is now he plays next season. Like, we've got half the season to go. Look at the form he's in. He plays next season. It may be a case where he only plays half a season like we've got Oscar Allen, we've got Jack Darling, Bailey Williams is coming through. We've got options in those positions. It may be a case where they go, mate, keep yourself fit and fresh, and you play half to maybe 3/4 of the campaign. And we use you that way. And you know what? We might get another year after that out of you potentially. That's ambitious, but possible. So I thought it would be his last year this year, but definitely plays next year, surely.
Well, we're doing our hot takes shortly, and I've got that as a conversation point for then. So let's leave it until we do our hot takes. Is there anything else? Do you want to self-indulge at all anymore in this game, or do we get to the votes?
I want to get to another angle on it. So
Yep.
We'll get to the votes and outline the best players through the votes like we always do. But I think we need to touch on the stadium and the atmosphere a little bit. Now, when we started this pod, Drewy, we talked about the West Coast Eagles being arguably the biggest sporting club in Australia. Mm-hmm. When you look at the images on Sunday night, you make a pretty strong claim for that in that stadium. And the size of the club and the success of the club, of course, comes with it. Now, I was watching before I had to do some work for OPTUS for the England game at the Euros, and I was watching with Stephen Taylor. Now, for those who don't know, Stephen Taylor played like over 200-300 games for Newcastle United in the Premier League. Really well-known defender, top of the Premier League chain for central defenders for a long period of time. This is a guy who's played at Anfield, at Old Trafford, at the Emirates, at St. James's Park, which is his home ground, which is an unbelievable stadium and an unbelievable atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Goes through there. They're some of the most passionate fans in the world. I was watching and he was next to me. He was gobsmacked at what he saw. He was just like, what an incredible stadium. Look at those fans. What an atmosphere. It was truly world-class. Truly world-class. And I don't think we always recognize that. We go, oh yeah, it's a great stadium in Australia and all that. That's as good an image as you'll see anywhere in world sport. Legitimately. And we're so lucky to have it. And it made such a difference to our team in that last quarter.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I enjoyed that story. And it gives me goosebumps thinking about the atmosphere. Like I haven't been to a live game at Optus Stadium, so I can't even talk about it from experience. It's almost embarrassing that I haven't been. COVID has sort of screwed that up on more than one occasion. But it's spine-tingling when West Coast play that way and the crowd, get on board. Like, I think that now maybe rivals the Jeddah goal in the qualifying final against Collingwood. There's a couple of moments where the crowd just goes absolutely off, and the Jeddah one comes to mind. And that one is probably number one. Can you think of any other ridiculous Optus Stadium moments that we've had?
The Melbourne prelim, it wouldn't have been the same level of noise, but that first quarter or first half would have been pumping, maybe a couple of decibels down, but it would have been consistent because the goals were just flowing so rapidly, and it was a preliminary final. So maybe that first quarter or first half where it just would have been a party, but not that decibel level, not that crescendo that you hit towards the end there when JK kicks it and then you hang on for a minute and a half. Shannon Hearn takes that mark and the siren goes. No, that 1 minute and a half is as loud as it would have ever been, I'm sure. And it was just a wonderful sight and great to see our players get so excited and so revved up in it. They usually play it a little bit cool, but on this occasion they let their emotions go as they should have. And that was fantastic. So yeah, it was just a pleasure to watch. And we're lucky, mate. I'm lucky. I've traveled the world watching sport. I've been so incredibly, fortunate in that sense. I'm dying to go back to Perth for a game. I never thought I'd say that. That seems like a weird thing to say because I'll go to Melbourne and watch games there and I'll watch games in Sydney and get my Eagles fix that way. Like I'm dying to go to Perth purely for no other reason than to watch an Eagles game at Optus Stadium. I mean, that's the lure of that venue right now. And I've got mates who are like, I want to go to a game where my team's playing at Optus. I want to go on a trip there. So we just don't realise how lucky we are to have an arena of that standard for our team.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you think about, it's Perth. Like you're not travelling to Perth for too many reasons unless you've got family there. But I guess I hadn't really thought about it that way. But it must be an alluring possibility for opposition fans to go to Perth and experience that. And hopefully your team wins, but also you're getting an amazing football experience out of it.
It's the envy of every other state. You know, the only stadium that beats it in Australia is the MCG when it's fully packed. That's it. People go on about the Adelaide Oval. Give me an absolute spell. I've been lucky enough to be there. It's a beautiful arena. It does not hold a candle to Optus fully packed. Doesn't get close for atmosphere and for majesty. Not even close. As, you know, well designed and as nice as the rebuild is and all that. Like, give me a spell. There's daylight between the two. So we've got the second best stadium in the country, and it's better than the MCG in a lot of occasions, apart from when the G's, you know, over 60, 70,000. Then unfortunately you can't match that.
Yeah, I mean, Adelaide Oval's it's got a bit of history to it. That's all that it's got going for it. And I was there for the showdown after Phil Walsh passed away, and that was the closest showdown ever. Liverpool happened to be in town, which was why I was in Adelaide. And that was loud and it was an amazing experience. Again, I can't really talk about Optus Live because I haven't done it. But, you know, MCG Grand Final Day, you struggle to match that. But again, it's a partial corporate crowd and it's partial neutral. So it's so hard for any stadium experience to actually match West Coast against a big team rocking at Optus Stadium, because it's very rare that you get that many fans, like basically 58, 59,000 West Coast fans all screaming and yelling at the same time. There's not many sporting experiences that can match that, because yes, that Richmond prelim against GWS, like I'm fairly sure that I could hear the celebrations from the stadium of the first goal by Dusty from Collingwood. Like I was at home in Collingwood, I could hear it, like the stadium explode, because there was about 95,000 Richmond fans there. But it's very rare. So Optus Stadium, big game, West Coast. It's, as far as, you know, worldwide sporting experience, it's got to be up there.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, yeah, just spellbound by what we saw on Sunday evening. I just want to mention Luke Foley. So I went through some of the kids before. I think I left him out. I mean, the kid's just starring at the moment at halfback. His kicking's beautiful. So he's got composure as well. But I really like his kicking. I think he's got an extra 5-10 meters on his kick than some of our other halfbacks. And we've spoken about how many halfbacks we've got. He penetrates with the foot, and that's pretty handy for us. It's not quite Shannon Hearn distance, but it's not far off.
Yep, I'm a massive fan of Luke Foley. Again, it's in my hot take, so I'm going to leave this one for now.
Okay. Let's get into the votes then, right? Want me to go first, or have you got your 5-1 ready to go?
Well, 5 votes, I imagine, for most people, although not you, Garby, is Josh Kennedy. So he gets the 5 from me because of the match-winning capabilities. Yeah. And that, in the end, that's trumped it for mine. So last week I didn't do that for Liam Ryan, but such was the occasion for Kennedy and the fact that he slots the goal late. He also helped set up a couple in the last quarter. Mr. Clutch, you know, the greatest forward that West Coast's had. I think we can safely say that. And one of the most valued clubmen in history, and he steps up when we need him. So 5 votes from me for Josh Kennedy. Now, I've gone 4 for Shannon Hearn. I just thought he was an absolute pillar of strength. I've loved his game over the last couple of weeks, and I don't think it's a coincidence that when the chips have been down and we've had guys out, that Hearn has stepped up and taken his game to another level. I think he revels in that opportunity, and he was superb again, particularly late, a couple of game-saving marks. Again, maybe they can't, you know, he gets an extra premium on doing important stuff late, but he was good throughout the entire match. I've gone 3 votes for Elliot Yeo. Again, if you look at the stat sheet, you're not blown away by what Yeo's producing at the moment, but I just think his influence around the ball is massive. You know, he was standing on Dustin Martin in the in the centre square, and then his physicality around the ball. He laid a couple of massive tackles, driving blokes into the ground, including Cochin. I just think he adds a spark and a physicality to our midfield, which we've really missed. So 3 for him. 2 for Jack Redden, who I thought, if anything, his game probably gets lost and is probably underrated. But I think he laid at least 10 tackles, had 20 disposals, ran both ways, was awesome in the middle for us. And 1 to Nick Naitanui, you know, as we've come to expect, an absolute superstar. And then I easily could have given votes to Luke Edwards. He was sensational in his second game. And Foley and Harry Edwards probably unlucky as well. And Tom Barrass was awesome. So there's a lot there.
Well, Jack Redden got my 5. I thought he was our best player. 32 disposals, 7 clearances. Everyone's going on about Yo's clearances, which they should do. Jack Redden had 7 himself.
Yep.
And I thought in the first quarter, the way he dropped back in defensive 50 and took 2 or 3 really important marks was crucial for us. I thought just over the 4 quarters, the whole game, he was our best player. So Redden got the 5 for me. I agree with Hearn, the 4. Kennedy, the 3. I mean, I'm buying into everything you're saying, but we had a lot of players who deserve votes. Natanui, the 2. Elliot Yeo, the 1. Just on Nick Nat and Elliot Yeo, it's the leadership that is so important, that is making such a big difference. And we touched on it last week with Yoey, and we've spoken about it numerous times during the season, that was something that was missing. All those elements that we spoke about that were missing, the leadership, putting the hard word on each other, driving momentum during a game when it's going against you. Elliot Yeo has changed that, and Nick Natanui's changed it as well since he's been made captain. Now, this is not a Toby Green, Stephen Cornelio, do you think about changing captain scenario? Luke Shuey comes back and he's a skipper and that's fine. But man, he's lifted since he's been given that responsibility. Like, he's driven it on himself to get the team over the line. And Elliot Yeo has been the bull and the balls in there. Like, we're not letting them run over us, boys. We're not losing this game. We haven't had that up until this point. We've let teams steamroll us. We've given up games we should have won. Yeo and Natanui have changed that enormously. And it's a line in the sand. And then you bring back all the guns that we know are still on the injured list. And we'll get into that later on when we talk about potential changes. And we've rocketed back into contention. Like, we're a legitimate contender again. Maybe the bottom of that list, but we are. And I reckon Yeo returning, not so much his inside work, which is super important. It's the will of the man that has just been a game changer. And then Nick's gone with him as captain.
You just can't tell me that Yeo's return doesn't have some correlation with it. You just wouldn't be able to convince me. And I'm sure it's almost like he's taken Nick along for the ride. And maybe Natanui had already come to the conclusion that it was his responsibility to bring a bit more leadership and a bit more gusto on game day. But it's lifted from Nick, like, no question. And him getting the captaincy is part of that. But I don't think it's all of it. I think that he may have taken it upon himself, particularly after that GWS game. The more that I think about the Essendon game, the more you have to attribute losing a couple of players during the match as being a massive part of why we fell away. Yeah. Losing Kelly so early, who was dominating, and then losing a player as important to our structure as Oscar Allen, that played a massive part in why Essendon ran over the top of us. So, yes, we weren't good enough, but I group that as part of the last, say, month the last 3 weeks at least, where Nick and Yeo and co have been fighting hard and have offered that leadership. So, yeah, it's been massive, hasn't it? And there's just no doubt that not just having Yeo back in the midfield has been great from a physical sense. It's also, there's a mental and emotional uptick that we've got with him in the team, and we're all the better for it. So the final tallies, Garby, for the votes. So JK was a runaway leader at the top, 135 votes, and then Nick had 89. So there was a fair gap between the 5 and the 4. So Nick gets 4, Reddo gets 3. As you said, great game, and was prominent. What I really enjoyed before, and it sort of clicked when you were talking about him, is that what I've loved from Redden in recent times, and he's played a really good month, is that he's doing the basics really well. He's playing like Jack Redden footy. So there's no stuff ups. Like, he's playing to his strengths. He's doing everything that he does really well. And I think there's something to be said for that. It's what Matt Prittis did for, a decade, and we won a Brownlow doing it. So Redden's playing his role really well. And then Hearn gets 2 and Yeo 1. So Luke Edwards was 1 or 2 votes off getting in the 5, but Yeo just pips him. Yeah, but he was absolutely sensational. For a 19-year-old against the reigning premiers, I just can't believe that he produced that performance. 11 disposals in the last quarter. He was freaking everywhere. Ran someone down. Yeah.
Who gets sacked at Adelaide for not picking him?
Oh, they just need they. I wrote a piece about this, and Adelaide's recruiting has been pretty good, and they've got a lot of good young players on their list. How they couldn't make room for Luke Edwards is beyond me.
It's not just any father-son either. Like, it's Tyson Edwards' son, like one of your greatest ever players. It's not just some guy who snuck in 100 games. Like, sure, that's a glaring oversight.
It's interesting, isn't it? Something that I had forgotten was that they rookie listed the eldest Edwards' son, and he didn't work out. So they had priors with Tyson Edwards' kids, and I think his name, off the top of my head, I think it's Jacob. He missed out 1 year on the list, didn't play a game, and got delisted. And then Luke did stuff with them on and off for 3 or 4 years, and then they said to him, just take some time away from the club, like, learn your football identity away from Adelaide, and also we don't want you to have too many coaches, because you've got your club coach, your school coach, your under-18 state coach as well. You've got so many voices. I think they didn't want to overdo it with him. But as far as Tyson Edwards was aware, at the start of his draft year, Adelaide were keen as mustard. And then he just didn't have this season that they were hoping. Played one's footy for Glenelg, and he didn't play state 18s because they didn't have it. But he didn't have the worst year, but it wasn't his best, and he fell off their radar.
All right. Well, he was unlucky to not get a vote. So the updated leaderboard after the 5-1, which Drewy has just given you, there's a break at the top, and it's the big man, the current skipper, or the stand-in skipper, Nick Natanui, out to 27 votes, which is huge. 6 clear of Tim Kelly on 21, Jack Darling on 20, Tom Barras 17, Dom Sheed 15, Andrew Gaff 14, Oscar Allen 13, Jack Redden jumps up to 12. So he's with the leaders there, Jack. He's holding his ground and keeping in touch. Jack Petruccelli 7, Shannon Hearn 6, so he jumps up a bit. Luke Shuey 5, Josh Kennedy 5, gets his first votes for the season, and all 5 of them. And Elliot Yeo got the 1. He gets his first vote for the season, which is understandable as well. So a 6-vote lead for Nick Natanui at the top. He's going to be hard to stop from here, Drewy. And we got some hot takes. I haven't included this one. Have you got anything on Nick Nat? If not, I'll just mention something on him.
No, go.
Do they play 2 ruckmen of the All-Australian team? Does he get in with Max Gawn, do you think? On current form, assuming he stays fit, etc.? On
current form, yes.
So they go 2 ruckmen, you reckon? He gets his 3rd blazer.
Yeah, I don't see why not. They'd just play him on the All-Australian team as West Coast do, 60%.
Yeah, I would say they'll go with 2 rucks. Gawn will get the number 1 ruck. I think he's been the best, but Nick Nat's right with him. Like, he's not far off at all. You look at the coaches' votes, he's neck and neck. I think Tom Hickey had the 2nd ruck position for a little while. Nick Nat's flown by him. And it's those 2 and Daylight as the 2 best ruckmen in the competition. Like, Brodie Grundy's dropped off. It's just a clear best 2. And I think on form this season, they probably have to go with 2 rucks. Nick's close enough to Max Gawn to do that. So, yeah, that'll be exciting for us if he can get a 3rd one.
Yeah, and I mean, yesterday Max Gawn got beaten in the ruck by Max Lynch, who played his 3rd game for Collingwood. So Nick's right there. Nick's absolutely dominant. And if you look at this, if you look at champion data stats, he's the 2nd best player in the comp.
Yeah.
So, and the eye test is clear and always has been for Nick. And Jared Healy's on that panel, so he will argue for him hard. We know that. All right, so give me a hot take, Garby.
So I've given you 3. Speaking of All-Australian Blazers, this is the one I raised. Blazer time for TB. Tommy Barras. Wiedering and Stephen May are probably the 2 clear best key defenders. But Tommy Barras is there as well. And there's half a season to go. He's coming off a bunch of good campaigns. He gets good recognition. If something changes, an injury or so on, he could sneak in, and certainly the squad. I don't think he's made a squad yet. I reckon he's a very good chance for that, and an outside chance as it stands for his first All-Australian gong. Yeah,
well, I mean, as it stands, you'd think in the 40, potentially Lever and May make it. They've both had great seasons. Demons have got the best defence in the comp. whether the selectors go real Melbourne heavy. At this stage, they probably would, but obviously we've still got 10 games to go, so that could change. But Tom's had an extremely consistent season, and we were so impressed by him early, but now I guess we just expect it week in, week out. And it's even more impressive because he's done it with Jeremy McGovern injured. So he's had to sometimes take the big beast of a key forward. You know, he had a tough day, as did many against Geelong. But other than that, he's clearly been our best defender. So he's having a great season. So, yeah, at this stage, he might sneak into the squad of 40 as the fourth key defender.
Cool. No need for a rebuild was my second hot take, but we've discussed that, I think. So I think we've covered that one. The final one's a bit of a downer. What's up with Big Jack? I made a pretty big call here 3 weeks ago after he kicked 5 against Adelaide, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and said he'll win the Coleman. I think he's kicked 2 goals since. Is he carrying an injury? Nick Floston bossed him in the first quarter. He couldn't get near it. Only kicked the 1 against Carlton. Is something up with him, do you reckon?
You think he's just sore?
Maybe.
Maybe needs the
getting
bye.
Through to the bar.
Yeah. He's carried it. Maybe he's one of those guys who SIMMO'S talked about in press conferences where he said, yeah, we've got a few sore guys, but we can't really rest them. Like maybe that's Jack. Who knows? But he hasn't been himself the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, I can't imagine you go from career best form to can't get near it in 2 weeks because unless there's some sort of niggle involved. So I'm not panicking.
No. I don't think it's much to worry about, but it's worth raising.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that's your 3.
Yeah, well, I've covered the no need for a rebuild. So, yep, they're all done. Up to you, mate. You go.
Well, can I just touch on this, on your rebuild thing?
Yep.
Today, we've released on the Nest our young player power rankings. So I started looking at this list after the Carlton game, just to sort of, even in my own mind, just get sorted where our prospects are at and how many good ones do we have? Like how optimistic should we be? So I've ranked our 10 best young player prospects. So yeah, join up. It's restricted content, so you've got to join the Nest to look at it. But if you were doing this list, Garby, who would you have as number 1, 22 and under?
Number 1, 22 and under. So I think you sent it to me a while ago and I agreed with the list that you sent. So, it's got to be Oscar Allen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. It's Oscar and then Daylight, 22 and under. Like he's our golden boy. He's our, college quarterback. He's the man you build a franchise around.
Yep.
So undoubtedly Oscar Allen. I don't want to give too much away, but you had a player there at 2, Drewy, who is falling off the radar a little bit. So it's changing rapidly, these power rankings.
Well, that's it. That's why they're power rankings. So maybe we'll update them in a few weeks. But yeah, it's so log on. It's the price of a coffee and you can give us some feedback on the power rankings. But I want to have a really big week after a good victory. So we'll be pumping out lots of content, hopefully from the Nest this week. But just on that, a big mover up the list this week was Luke Foley. So one of my hot takes is that Foley is now in our best 23 and we need to keep him in a side.
Yep, I would agree. I mean, this is going to be ridiculously hard to lock down a team, assuming Kelly, McGovern, Shuey and Shepherd all come in and no one goes out with an injury for the Dogs game. My Lord, how do they do that? How
do you keep him in the team? Nelson's versatility is so important.
Nelson won't stay in. I don't see how he stays in.
But it's possible that Luke Edwards and Foley are going to get dropped after both playing superb games against Richmond. It's amazing, isn't it? But I just think Foley just looks that good. He basically, he looks like Shepherd 2.0.
Yeah.
And that's very good news for West Coast. I don't know if they knew what they had, like battling away in the poor old Waffle Eagles who've only got about 12 players, but he's been superb since he's come in.
I mean, when you look at these players to come in, I don't know we go the second ruck option. I think they're going to ask Oscar to play second ruck because I just don't know how we fit them all in. Like, I think they want to keep a player like Harry Edwards in the team. Like Oscar playing second ruck and Harry Edwards staying in is better than Bailey Williams giving Nick a chop out.
So my second hot take is Harry Edwards could be our second ruck / extra tall.
Okay, so there you go. So I'm setting you up beautifully today, Druza.
Yeah, we're really in sync today, and that's what happens after you have a real team building victory. so Harry, like I know I talked about it before, but I saw everything that I needed to see in terms of a guy that's bloody switched on and knows footy in that moment where he took the game on and then hit a little 20-meter angled pass off the outside of his boot. Like I want that around the ball. I love Bailey Williams and what he's got to offer right now, but he's like grabbing a baseball bat and banging it against the ground. Like that's what he's doing, right? He's just big, bustling, strong, and he's going to smash people over. He's a sledgehammer, but Harry looks like he's got some finesse and he's got, some craft to his game, but he's 200 centimeters. So he would give us something in the ruck and around the ball if required. And hell, I mean, can we play Josh Kennedy 10% less game time and keep him fresher? Can we keep Jack Darling a bit fresher by having these extra tools rotate and roll around? Where it leaves Jake Waterman, I'm not sure, but I'm just putting it out there. Edwards could ruck, let Bailey develop in the twos, and maybe that works as the extra tall, and it also maybe takes the pressure off Barrass and McGovern. Hell, even maybe Barrass can have a rest and keep Edwards in the team. So that's something for you. And then take 3 is, and you brought it up earlier, Josh Kennedy should probably rest a bit more from what we've just seen. So he gets the bye this week. That's great. Maybe this game against Sydney at the SCG is such a big game for us that he has to play that game. But then when we play, I think we've got St Kilda or an easier fixture after that, then maybe he rests. Like, let's keep him fresh. Like, that impact that he had off the back of a break was amazing. And you even probably drew it out a little further than I thought, is that I want him to play for another 2-3 years. And why not? Play him 10 or 12 games a season. Like, let's keep him in cotton wool. He can play home games and massive games in Melbourne or something like that. And let's keep him around as long as possible. You can't tell me that having Josh Kennedy at our football club is in any way a negative.
No, I think that's the way they'll probably go, and that's hugely exciting. Something that's not as exciting is trying to work out how we, and I'm writing down notes here, how we actually compile the 22 when Kelly, Shep, Shuey and Gov come back. And that's not even including Alex Witherden, right? Who's probably only 2-3 weeks away. And that's not including Jared Brander, who can't get back in the team, who we were raving about a month ago. So just those 4. So I don't know what you think, Drew. I've got the definite outs: Langdon, Waterman, Nelson. Harsh on Nelson. He actually did a pretty good job on Dusty as well as he could do. I just don't see how he stays in. So Langdon, Waterman, Nelson come out. And then you've got any of Luke Foley, Luke Edwards or Jermaine Jones. And it seems ridiculous to mention Foley and Edwards after their last 2 weeks, but that's the predicament we're in. And then maybe JJ, but that depends on team balance. I saw someone mentioning Tom Cole today on one of the social media sites. Like, come on, no. Tom Cole is in this team. I will not be having that for a moment. Tommy Cole gets dropped. No,
I don't think he's in that conversation at this stage, but a time will come where they'll have to potentially make a choice between Foley, Edwards and Cole, because it's going to get so hard to keep everyone in. I think they'll choose Cole over those players, but that might be the conversation they end up having. So at the moment, he's absolutely done enough. But yeah, it could be horses for courses, and you know that injuries pop up along the way, Garby. So there's going to be knocks and scrapes that allow you to keep guys in the team. But this is the beauty of having injuries. The silver lining is that you find out things. So we actually know in round 18, if Dom Sheed tweaks his hammy at training, that we can pick Luke Edwards and there's a chance he might have 30 possessions and kill it. So that's a great thing to have, and it's confidence for Luke. It's confidence for everyone.
I didn't even mention Jack Petrocelli, who was a laid out. So how does he squeeze in?
And Langdon's actually playing pretty well. I'm not.
He was a bit down this week. He really good against Carlton. I thought he was a little bit poorer. His second half was better against the Tigers, but I think he's going to find it hard to stay in when Kelly and Shuey come back.
It is really fascinating, isn't it? It's the luxury of it is it's tough. It's gonna give. It might keep Simmo up at night. That's how hard it's going to be. But ultimately, it's good for the club. There's going to be some disappointed players, but once they've had a taste for it and they know they can do it, it makes such a massive difference for us.
And players will leave. Like, we need to get our heads around that now. You can't keep a list like this together without some players going, listen, I want to go somewhere else because I'm not going to get game time here. Like Xavier O'Neill or, maybe a Jared Brander. They're going to come to the club and go, listen, if I'm not going to get the games because you've got these other guys coming through, I need to go back to Melbourne potentially. And the club will say, well, yeah, we can afford to do that. Or, maybe they say, look, to one of our halfbacks, we can afford to trade you because we can get the first round pick because we've got Foley and Edwards coming through. I mean, that's the situation we're in. Jackson Nelson is very likely, I reckon, to be on the trade table end of the season. That's nothing against Jacko, who I really like. It just makes sense. Like, he's an experienced player. He can offer someone 3 years of good footy. When you've got Foley and Edwards coming through and you can get a second round pick for Jacko Nelson, you'd be mad not to take it and even up your salary cap a little bit when you've got youngsters coming through who don't demand as much money and you can get another draft pick for.
It gives us options. There's no doubt about that. I think there is a trade to make on our list. I'm not exactly sure who it is, but there is someone who could potentially make way and give us an extra, second round pick or maybe a late first rounder if we're lucky. But there might be one to make somewhere. I don't know exactly who it is, but it's trending that way.
Yeah, it's great though. It's great. I mean, we're back in the mix, and we can dream about having a good finals run and being at the MCG on the last Saturday again, as difficult as it will be to do. And you've got 7 legitimate contenders this season, and then our future's not as bleak as it seemed 4 to 6 weeks ago, and we're worried about falling off the cliff and going through a few years of pain. So that's great. The bye comes at the perfect time. We've got momentum, but we can rest players up, and we've got a home game coming up against the Dogs, who will be coming off a tough game away to Geelong. So, if we've got the freshness up and those energy levels up, we can knock off another big fish.
Yeah, so our next 3 games are Bulldogs at home, Sydney at the SCG, and then North Melbourne at home. So if we could stick away 2 out of 3, obviously we're banking on a North Melbourne victory at home. But to either win at the SCG or knock off the Dogs, who have been, let's face it, the second best team this season, it's going to be a tough game. If we can take 2 out of the next 3, that sets us up really nicely, because that win against Richmond opens things up a little bit. It gives us access to the top 4, which we wouldn't have had. So at the moment, we're only percentage out. So, we beat a couple of teams in and around that area, then we're putting ourselves really in the mix with our team only getting stronger from here. So it's pretty bloody exciting.
It's enormous, mate. It's absolutely fantastic. So great times, and just cannot wait for the second half of the season now. I mean, there were times in the first half when we thought we're out of it. Like, we're going to go through the motions this season, and then we have to reconsider enormously where we're going with our list and everything. So it's changed the landscape of that in a big, big way. And what's the deal with Adam Simpson's new contract? Because I heard you mentioning it on Fox Footy the other night that he's signed on for another 2 years, but there hasn't been much around.
Yeah, so I think it's been done fairly quietly. I was chatting to Tommy Morris about it, and he said it's locked in. It's a 2-year extension. The deal has been done, but there's just no announcement at the moment. So maybe that
when was his contract running out?
End of next season.
Okay.
So he's now locked until 2024. But I think they're just dotting I's and crossing T's and little things like that. But it's been agreed to, the 2-year extension. It's like the Patrick Cripps deal. Like, yeah, he's going to sign a 4-year extension, and it's been agreed to, but they're haggling over little bits and bobs, the salary cap increasing, or, in Simmo'S case, it might be the soft cap increasing, all those little details need to be sorted out. But yeah, it's a 2-year extension. So that makes it 2024.
Well, that's great to hear. So I mean, that's important for two reasons. Firstly, it keeps him out of the clutches of Collingwood, potentially Carlton. Like so much talk about the Buckley replacement and who Carlton would go for if Teague gets the chop. I'm shocked that Adam Simpson's name wasn't mentioned. He's a Melbourne boy. I know he's well and truly happy in the West, but you'd be derelict in your duties if you're on the board of those clubs and you weren't talking about Adam Simpson and seeing if he was potentially available and if there was interest from him to come back to Melbourne. So it keeps them at bay, which is great. And it shows he's committed to going through maybe a tough year or two. I know we're very excited about the future right now, but there's still some big name players who are going to start dropping off a little bit and retiring. And we may not be in a position to challenge for a flag in, say, 2-3 years' time. He wants to see through that period, which is great. And that's really encouraging for us.
My feel on this, Garby, is that the only reason that Adam Simpson will leave his post at West Coast, if there is some sort of family issue that is so urgent that he feels he needs to move back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
But
he won't be there forever. Like, he's been there for a long time now. How long has Simmo been at the club for? Nearly 10 years?
Yeah. You're testing me here, but I think 2014 was his first season. So and then 2015.
7th season. So, you start to get to the 10-year mark and the voice can sometimes become a little tired on the players and everything can just stagnate a bit like Buckley has now, and you need a change. So it's going to get to that point as well, potentially, where both parties might go, we've just reached the end of the road and it's time for freshness on both accounts. So that can happen, but we don't want to trade him for anyone as it stands.
Do you think that, though, that in 3 years' time, when Simmo's next contract will expire, the team's going to look a lot different? Do you think that because there'll be some replenishing, and as always, West Coast will seek to bring players in who are reaching their prime, who are interstate, that you might have the nucleus of the team so different that it won't be that his voice is getting stale because it's a new team?
Yeah, that's quite possible. But it's very hard to turn over that many players. Like, you'd be talking about 22 in the team and close to 40 on the list.
Well, the captain,
you don't get that much turnover, I think.
The captain in 2025, let's say, is probably going to be Oscar Allen.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite possible. And if he's the captain, there's probably not going to be any Darling, no Kennedy. McGovern's probably retired. Shuey's possibly retired. You've got Kelly as one of the elder statesmen there. Probably no more Redden. Gaff's going to be at the end.
Yeah.
I guess Sheed's still there, but there's going to be a lot of that. The team will have made a shift.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's probably a discussion for another day. But it's
great.
I know
the point you're making. Yeah, I get the point you're making, and that can potentially help. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, I think we could talk about the game for a couple of hours. Really, we could probably watch it and do a rewatchable. To be honest, it's that good. Maybe one day in the future we will, because it's going to go down as one of the great victories in West Coast history.
Hopefully we've got a big grand final to talk about, that usurps it soon, or a big finals win or something like that. But that was brilliant. I mean, I'm knackered. It's late in the afternoon. I'm due for a little nap. I might just put it on in the background yet again and just enjoy it. Why wouldn't you? And I hope everyone's doing the same. We've got a week off, so we've got a week to dine out on it, Drewy, which is great. And then it's we have to fire up for the Bulldogs on a Sunday afternoon, and hopefully the boys can produce the same, and we can win another one and keep this little resurgence going in season 2021.
And I'm just going to put this on a thought that I've just had, a thought bubble. Maybe I try and get to Sydney for the SCG game if they open up the borders.
That'd be nice.
We can catch up post game over a beer.
Yeah, you can get in and out in a day, so you'd be mad not to. I was planning to go to Melbourne for the Carlton game, which ended up being in Sydney. So I've got that on my agenda as well, to get to Melbourne for a game when the Eagles are there. So that'll probably be a point in the second half of the season where I'll do that too. So yeah, we're loving it at the moment. And thank you all for listening and for all your feedback. Get onto the Patreon, the Young Player Power Rankings. I'm sure you want to see them. I'm sure you got your thoughts. So it's not going to cost you. You're not going to notice how much it costs you. So get on and chip in and be part of the family officially, which is great. It's like a membership basically, and there's some great content there. So get involved. Hope you're loving the podcast, and we'll chat to you all on Twitter, and enjoy the break and dine out on the Richmond Triumph.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.